stay? Lean in a little bit. Okay, this is chapter 12, A Man Apart. During my first day of work on set of A Man Apart, we shot one of the early scenes of the film. Once again, I found myself at the gorgeous beachfront home in Malibu. Sorry, y'all, my phone was in Malibu. Um, Trying to fix my stand. It was perfect. Then had to move it. Okay. During my first day of work on the set of A Man Apart, we shot one of the early scenes on the film. Once again, I found myself at a gorgeous beachfront home in Malibu, Zumba Beach, and I worked from 6 in the morning until around 6 in the evening. There was a perfect sunset on the horizon and a brisk chill in the air. Flocks of birds could be seen flying over the ocean as its waves crashed into the shore. This was the Southern California at its best. I was content with the work that I had done and excited to be among the cast, crew, and director. Lorenz and I forged a pleasant friendship that would translate on scene. I would stay in character as his wife, even during breaks in the shooting. I would make his plate at a lunch or a and a nitpick about his clothes and hair, making sure everything was in order. There was no actual romantic feelings between Lorenz and me, but I enjoyed being his wife for the duration of our time. On A Man Apart, he was kind and very much a gentleman. On a few occasions, his mother and grandmother would visit him on set. It was easy to see where Lorenz had gotten his manners and respect for women. He was extremely grounded and humble. It made my job as a new actress easier. As a director, F. Gary Gray seemed to be extremely hands on. He saw to it that all cast members became acquainted with one another even before we began to film. He sent Lorenz and me on a few dinner and lunch dates strictly for that purpose. Gary was very helpful to me and guided me through the entire process. He gave me a few pointers about acting, of course, but also made me aware of my body on camera. At the beginning of filming, I weighed 140 pounds. Gary explained that although I would be attractive to any man walking down the street, the camera would not be so kind, and so that I should lose weight immediately, and so I did. During the 2 week break of the film during the holiday season in 2001, I lost 20 pounds before returning to set. How I lost the weight is another story, filled with cold Atlanta nights and a very young lover. Belvedere vodka. Gary also told me one other very important rule is making a successful picture. Under no circumstances was I ever to date or have sex with any of the male co stars. I was the only woman on the set. For most of the part, it seemed to stand out with my trademark walk. I had inherited the same sexy swagger that my mother and grandmother had all their lives. It was like a cobra doing her dance on the deck. Right before the strike of her venomous bite, a form of peacocking I had used to entice men that had been that had become second nature to me, and that to my 38 C-size breast, 33-inch waist, and 38-inch hips and bottom. It was obvious that there could be trouble on set. I took Gary's advice to heart. After all, he did know best. But I have to admit, it was impossible at best. I had been paying close attention to Vin Diesel while on set, secretly listening to everything he said and following him around with his eyes. I loved it when he walked past me and hoped he would say something to me, something outside of the work that we had to do. But he remained professional and I remained desirous. At the end of the first shooting day, I left the set and walked slowly to the row of trailers that were lined along the beach, beaming on the inside while trying to compose myself on the outside. I couldn't believe I was shooting a film that would actually be in a movie. I was watching the ocean as it splintered and thought about how far I had come and all the places I would like to go from here. It seems as if my world had opened up and I'd become given a chance and changed my life drastically. I had thought about maybe all those days I practiced my acceptance speech to the academy just might pay off. I reflected on a few of my favorite actors in movies, like Gary Grant in An Affair to Remember and Robert De Niro in Deer Hunter. There is something very magical about the city of Los Angeles, which is magnified to its brightest from beyond of the rose-colored glasses. I began to see what the rest of the world in Hollywood had already known. This was a place of dreams. I continued my slow, lazy walk down the beach. Busy daydreaming, I paused the production trailer and then Gary's trailer. Without warning, I was grabbed around the waist and scooped into the next trailer. His strong, massive hands grabbed me by the shoulders and pulled me into his handsomely chiseled face. Remnants of the scene of Gone with the Wind. He pressed his lips firmly against mine. Then they parted. Our tongues touched and then danced. I melted in his mouth as the sun began to set over Zumba Beach. Ben and I were breaking all the rules and falling for each other. I knew that where we were doing was forbidden, but it also felt right and so necessary. I had imagined this scene from the first moment I had met him, but had never thought it possible. He had been changing his clothes and wore only his pants at his bare chest pressed against mine. I wanted to feel my skin and soft, round breast against his hard, lean muscles. I would more than I wanted more than I could have at the moment, but he was giving me, but what he was giving was powerful just the same. There had to have been some sort of silent sexual tensions the entire time when we were filming. I secretly fantasized about us making love on that very same beach. I wanted him, but for the first time that I could remember, I was afraid to show it. There must be something to say about the action and effects of pheromones because we had no openly flirtatious exchanges. There was no indication, at least outwardly, that it was okay for him to approach me in this way, let alone kiss me. Vin must have just smelled it, like an animal in the wild. That way he kissed that way he kissed me reflected that. The way that he kissed me reflected that. The way I kissed him back confirmed it. After our first kiss, Vin and I spent many days and nights together. It seemed to be a quiet place in his life, sort of the calm before the storm. We were still able to go to clubs, and once we sat outside a club in the black SUV listening to music because he couldn't get in. No one knew who he was, and I was just getting to know him. We spent a quiet night or two back at my condo, talking in depth about our lives. I remember him asking me about music, about who was hot at the time and which CDs he should buy. I was stunned by how uncool and almost sheltered he seemed to be. Yet here was this beautiful man with an amazing body, blessed with an inevitable eight pack and even more inevitable sizable penis. His body was perfect and the way he made love was slow and sensual and thoughtful. Between his gentle, passionate kisses, he frequently whispered, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" Always to be sure that I got pleasure out of our lovemaking. The weight of his body on top of mine and the way that his hands caressed every reachable inch of me while he stroked his inner core drove me wild. His kisses were soft and reachable and just wet enough. His lips were full and warm, and everywhere they went, I shook in full blown desire. I was so attracted to his plain, straight laced guy who had never owned an R. Kelly album or even heard of Ja Rule record, even after they filmed the Fast and the Furious together. I liked him because he was the opposite of me and everyone I knew. He represented a new life that I could easily picture myself living. I found him easy to be with. He was fun and he was fun and funny. I remember filming one particular scene where Vin's character Sean was just awaking from a coma. I sat there watching him act brilliantly, just as the cameras focused on my face to catch my emotional reaction to his awakening. All I could think of was the first kiss we shared and the good sex we had been having. During every scene that we had together, I would glow I would glow at his presence and had to resist my telling grin and blushing cheeks, like the scene where we were at a police conference. Lorenz and I were already there, and Vin walks in with the woman who played. his wife in the film. I could feel myself glowing at the sight of him as my eyes stayed planted on his. I felt that it must have been obvious to everyone else, but no one knew. Not until now. I fell for Vin during the shoot of The Man Apart, but the Fast and the Furious and XXX would take soon the Fast and the Furious and Triple X would take Vin away from me, just as it just as it is with music videos. There was a separation between the cast and the extras. The cast members were treated like royalty. We would have all meals fully catered and be served the best food and drinks, while the extras were made to eat lunch brought from home and in a separate dining away area away from us. There was a part of the difference between actors protected by the Sean Actors Guide, SAG, labor laws, and those were not. Extras were not usually people trying to be covered by SAG and needed to rack up a certain amount of hours worked in order to qualify for its benefits. Although A Man Apart would be my first feature, the amount of hours that I would be under contract with this film and the money I would be paid for the appearance in this film assured a place in the Screen Actors Guild. I was officially an actress. I was doing something that literally millions of people tried to do every day in Hollywood and I hadn't even been trying. I had been told by agents and managers to never repeat the story of how I've been discovered because other actors would resent it. It was the sort of fairy tale other only heard about in books or seen in television. There are young people, even today, sleeping on Hollywood and Sunset Boulevard who started out with the same dream that I had. They walk up and down those tellable boulevards hoping to be discovered by a passing director or an actor. I was discovered on the boulevard of broken dreams and went straight into co-starring a role on a big budget Hollywood picture. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect Hollywood beginning, but that was just how my life seemed to be working itself out. Everywhere I turned, someone was there to change my life, mostly for the best, but sometimes for the worst. It didn't matter if it was a Hollywood party or my local grocer. A famous, wealthy, or powerful man would be behind or in front of me. People like Ice and Gary. It seemed as if no matter the type of mess I'd gotten myself into, there were certain things that had to happen. Despise myself. Come across everyone I had come across had a purpose in my life. And with the type of breaks I was getting, I thought I was headed for better things. I was not lucky, but blessed. Being a Hollywood actress or anything related to entertainment doesn't happen to many people who come from St. Thomas. On the island, only focus for children is their education. The only dream is to graduate high school, their college, and then join the armed forces or get a job. People rarely step outside that box. Many islanders stay on the island all their lives, neither leaving nor not even for vacation. There are islanders at heart, and those great Virgin Islands, what they're on, jewels in the Atlantic. Most natives and other men that what hold on. Most natives need no more than what those 28 square miles have to offer. But I'd always been a dreamer though. I would soon learn the value of that old adage, being careful about what you wish for, courtesy of a certain NBA legend. There's 8 pages in this chapter. God damn, this is a long chapter. This is a long chapter. There's 8 pages in this chapter. Okay. This is chapter 13, Mr. Big. When I began shooting A Man Apart, I was on top of the world, both professionally and financially. Working as an actress in a green light movie meant I had no longer had to do things I didn't want to do to pay bills. I was free from having to strip in clubs or form relationship with wealthy men strictly to make financial ends meet. Every week a check for $3,000 would arrive at my mailbox, whether I worked that week or not. Personally, it seemed as if I had what other girls dreamed of as well. Earlier that month, I had begun dating one of the most recognizable men in the world, and although he would not be the only man of such high visibility in my life, he would be by far the most generous. We had mutual friends in John Sally, the former NBA player of the Detroit Pistons, and then on Fox Sports Net's Best Damn Sports Show, period, who had set us up on a blind date. According to John, I was this man's type, and he's certainly yours. John gave this mysterious man the directions to my place in Santa Clarita, just 30 minutes north of Beverly Hills, and I waited nervously for him to arrive. I heard a car's engine outside my window and the sound of door slamming. My doorbell rang, and I answered the door with butterflies fluttering in my stomach. When I opened my door, I was floored. It was the NBA superstar, world champion, Olympian gold medalist Shaquille O'Neal. I knew it was Shaq. I swear I was gonna say it Shaq. I had gone out with several high profile athletes, even with a few mega movie stars. He wasn't the biggest name wise, but he was the biggest in size. Shaq's presence was even more overwhelming than any man I had ever met. Shaq stands over 7 feet tall, weighs more than 300 pounds, and wears a size 22 shoe. God. When he greeted me at the door with a hug, I felt like a little girl as my cheeks pressed against his stomach. His face was lost, and his huge hands had held it to kiss my mouth. Shaq immediately began to look around my condo, checking what I needed to have. My place was still very new. The walls were stark with only white leather sofa and a black wrought iron coffee and end tables. There was a 25-inch television that I had gotten from a friend and no dining room set. I had no pots, no pans, only disposable plates and utensils. My bedroom had a second-hand full-size bed and the sheets that came with it. My son's room was empty. The bathroom shower was purchased at a local Dollar General and was in and were made extremely of thin plastic, which failed to protect the floor from spraying water. Although I had been living in my place for a while, it was all but barren. I spent so much time with other people like Ja Rule and Ray J. I rarely came home except to pack a new bag of clothes and maybe pay the bills every couple of months. My apartment was so empty that Shaq reached into his pocket and gave me a couple of $100 in cash. The next day, he arranged for $10,000 to be deposited into my bank account. Shaq was very upfront about the way the relationship would be. I won't be able to come see you a lot, so I'll just write you checks to keep you happy. He said he was charmingly self-effacing about his sexual powers and wanted to reduce my expectations. He essentially told me not to let his size fool him. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. No, I'm serious, he said. You may like it or you may not. Either way, you'll be way taken care of. I found sex with him satisfying, although one might have a one might have bigger expectations for a man who stands over 7 feet tall and who weighs more than 300 pounds compared to other men. He was nothing to complain about. I'm screaming. Shaq, or Big, as he officially called. It was reputed to be extremely is repu oh, I missed my page. Hold on. Okay, hold on. I missed my page. Okay, it's reputed to be extremely arrogant and conceited, yet also extremely honest. But I saw him as a man who knew exactly what he wanted and how to get it. It made no bones about saying what it was. By giving me money the first night, he was saying, I own you now. We had our first sexual counterment that same night. It was my way of thanking him since been I had been equated with money and sex. Even though Shaq and I had sex that night, it seemed to be the furthest thing from his mind during the remainder of our relationship. Over the next 4 months or so, Shaq and I would be intimate maybe 2 or 3 times. My most prominent memory about our sex life is of the weight of his body and the enormous amounts of sweat that would soak my body even through my mattress. On occasion, I had to turn my mattress over and have a dry place to sleep once he left. Once Shaq is known to be a very generous man who loves to take care of people around him, especially the women in his life, as long as they live by his rules. He changed my life at the time when I was so busy living other people's fantasies that I hadn't paid much attention to my own. He paid for all the things I had been neglecting with money and gave me throughout our short-lived relationship. I was able to purchase my son's first bedroom set and furniture for every room in the house. He did, however, have a few specific requests, like a big screen television and a large couch for him to sit on. He said that everything in my place had to be big because he was and that he wanted to be comfortable when he came over. He was very protective. He didn't want me to have to do anything, not cook or clean. At his request, I hired someone to clean my house for me. He said that no woman of his should have to work. All of her attention should be focused on him. He also demanded that I not go out or speak to anyone, especially not about him. Most women would have been more than happy to accept his role with no problem and no questions asked, not me. I was so accustomed to the spotlight and living life my way, I refused to do what he asked. Naturally, it strained the relationship. After a few months of trying to work it out, things came to a head. There was no shouting or high drama. We went back and forth in a short clip message on our two ways pagers, and I sat at the table to read A Man Apart. My mind was barely on the scene when we were reading because I was busy keying away in my effort to salvage. Yes?
Are you up for church?
No.
You got to be ready.
I'm not going.
You have to go. You're on blackout.
Oh. I
You
didn't
don't
know.
have a choice.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you're on blackout, you can't stay here alone, and we're all going.
Okay, I didn't know that. What time do I have to be ready?